Hey, everyone, and welcome back to Let's Harp About It. All right, we're here. My name is Winnie O'Kello, Winnie O, as many of you know me. I love having these conversations. This is where, for me, I'm like, this is like I thrive. I thrive in these moments, and I also love when I have amazing, knowledgeable, and just dope people who just like who are doing the work as well in the community and also share the technical expertise, share, but most importantly, share their lived experiences, right? Because I keep having to remind people I am the expert of my own lived experiences, right? Regardless of what anybody else says, regardless of whatever any other studies say, my lived experience absolutely means something and matters, and so does yours out there. And we want to create spaces to validate that and help you become more comfortable sharing that and speaking up, especially in the context of harassment and assault, because these are very real issues. They're global issues with local solutions that require local policy changes, local initiatives. Whether you're working with nonprofits or for-profit organizations, we want to make sure that we create an environment that is supportive and inclusive and affirming of your lived experiences. And so, I mean, if you're new to HARP, it's the Harassment and Assault Reporting Platform. You can connect with us at www.harpnow.org or on social media platforms at harpnow.org. That's at HARP and OWORG. We're on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, as well as Instagram. So can't miss us. And as usual, today we are going to be talking about what? Sexual harassment in the workplace, specifically the systemic misogyny that takes place, right? Like that is, it's rampant, it's real, and we're going to get into it. And I have Dr. Anju Singh with me. Please welcome her. Dr. Singh, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Winnie. Thank you for having me back. It's a pleasure. Thank you for creating this platform and a place where we can talk about our lived experiences. And the reason I think this is really important for us to do is because what happens with people who are experiencing harassment or abuse or intimidation in the workplace, they usually feel they're alone, they're isolated, or they feel they're the only ones.
That part.
And it doesn't happen to others.
Mm.
And it's a very self-deprecating, self-eroding, self-destructive cycle. So just knowing that there are others who have experienced it and putting it on a platform, I think that is really, really important to reach out to people who are experiencing this, letting them know they're not alone. Others experience it. We've been through it. And then, there are resources to speak up and to provide support. So I don't even know where to begin.
Oh, well, we're talking about resources and letting them know like where to reach out, right? So first of all, we're right here, right? You can harp it via the harp it buttons on the HARP webpage. Again, that's www.harpnow.org. We have two harp it buttons. One is for the general harassment and assault related incidents. Again, whether that's domestic abuse, child abuse, workplace harassment, transit harassment, street harassment, which again, oftentimes people feel is negligible, but it's not. It's important to also like be able to have your voice heard. So, support the data. If you've experienced or you witnessed these incidents happening, do harp it. We also have the police brutality button that specifically deals and collects data for police related incidents of harassment and assault. So thank you. Go back to you, Dr. Singh.
All right. So I think we've already talked about domestic violence and stuff that happens inside the house. So let's start talking about what happens as soon as you step out of the house.
That part.
So, there's this huge gap between inside the house and in the workplace is even when you're traveling. Most of the women who step out of the house to go to work, they have to be on public transit sometimes. And we know the amount of sexual harassment and intimidation and, eaves teasing and whistling and just the comments that we hear when we're out there on the streets. Growing up in India, we experienced this, but I'm told it happens around the world in all countries. So in India, when I went to school and college, or when you're out there, you're taking public transit. Sometimes the public transits are crowded. You don't get a place to sit down, so you're snug with other people around you. And there are people who will rub up against you, who'll put their hands in places they shouldn't be putting. And all of that is sexual harassment.
It sure is.
And it's very, number one, it's embarrassing, it's intimidating, it depletes you emotionally, it's humiliating.
Mhm.
Especially if you're an introvert by nature, you don't speak up, you're not, as they call, the drama queen or the angry black woman, you
That
know.
part.
So whether you speak up or you don't speak up, both have a negative effect. If you don't speak up, then the person gets more empowered
That part.
that, oh, she's not going to speak up, so I can do more of this and not
Yes.
be held accountable.
And they'll do it to other people as well, assuming that they will get the same
Exactly.
response.
And that's the importance of speaking up.
Yes.
Because for every person that doesn't speak up, you have inadvertently empowered the perpetrator to go and do this again. Because if one woman doesn't speak up, they believe other women won't speak up either. So then they feel they just got a free ticket to go do it to someone else. So we empower them, we embolden them when we don't speak up. But when we do speak up, they try and shut us down by calling us drama queen, angry black woman, or attention seeking.
Mm.
You shouldn't be doing, they'll blame the victim. Why were you wearing such a short skirt or a deep
Yes.
top? And what were you doing at that place at that time? Right? There's always victim blaming.
Like as if harassment and assault and and on the extreme end, rape and all that stuff, as if that didn't happen when women had like those long skirts to the ground. Like it still happened. Like you can't blame the women for. I was like, the only thing that stops rape is stopping rapists. The only thing that stops harassment and abuse is stopping abusers. Like I know, like this for some people this is mind blowing, but I'm like, you stop it at the source. Stop
I
blaming.
agree with that. And any of these systemic issues, they need to be managed with what I call a multi-prong approach.
Correct.
Any one thing from one side alone is not going to be enough. So
Yeah.
yes, we got to have laws and rules and policies in place to deter these people,
Correct.
to let them know that there will be consequences. There will be severe consequences to their actions.
Yes.
But if you think about the Me Too movement,
Mm-hmm.
it was not done by the perpetrators.
Right. That's true.
The women, it's the victims who spoke up.
Yeah.
So empowering the victim, giving the victim the voice, and
Absolutely.
the victims know they will be heard.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean. We saw that with what was his name, Brett Kavanaugh,
Oh yes.
right?
Even though he still got sworn in, but it's okay.
Right? People wouldn't believe his victim, even at that level. Even at that level. And that was so traumatic for so many women who have shared her lived experience.
Yeah.
Right? So even
And
though
it's
she came up, she had no reason to get all that attention. She had no reason to be on that platform except to speak her truth. She had no selfish interest whatsoever. And then she was given death. I mean, that's the thing. That's how empowered these abusers want to be.
absolutely. And for me, it's also it's sad that it's almost like we expected it. Like we knew the likelihood of her being believed and given that validity and support. We almost like we knew it was not going to happen, but we hoped that it would happen.
Right. So, as soon as a woman steps out of the house, she puts herself at risk of that. And, I did talk about, just people rubbing themselves against you,
Mhm.
or putting the hands in places they shouldn't have been putting. Following you, especially if it's, it's dark, or it's an alley place, or, just a lonely place where there isn't much of a crowd.
Yeah.
So if it's crowded, you're in trouble. If it's not crowded, you're in trouble.
Either way, you're in trouble.
You're in trouble. If it's too late, you're in trouble, right?
Right, absolutely. And that's actually how kind of I got into this work, was kind of from that transit and street harassment side of things. I was like, because I experienced way too much of that, and especially as a transportation professional, as someone who helps design these spaces, I realized I was like, why is this not part of the key conversation in our professional spaces? I was like, and this goes back to how intersectionality plays out in different workplaces, right? You have a very different conversation when you have a woman coming into a space that was traditionally male centric, because we just naturally tend to bring a different perspective, right? Because I realize oftentimes like the traditional people in those spaces, it's not it's not even it's not something they think about, right? Because if we look even how men navigate society, they oftentimes are not thinking of, oh, I guess it's kind of late, I shouldn't Uber home, and because the this week's post on the latest blog on HARP was about, the gender tax on women as they navigate public spaces, right? The mental checklist that we have to go through. If you're trying to get public transit, especially if you're using ride shares, so you're like, okay, am I going to be by myself? How long do I have to be in this vehicle? Does the picture match, the person who's supposed to come pick me up? When they come to pick me up, I have to make sure that it's the correct car. If I get into the car, I got to make sure that the child lock is not on, so I'm stuck in the car. I have to call somebody and let them know I'm going. I have to share that information with somebody so they know that I'm going to get there. And if anything happens to me, they have a way to track me down, right? And finally, these rideshare companies added that emergency button so that they have somebody like respond if you are feeling unsafe. But it's like all these extra mental checklists that women, it's like, it's almost like it's a way too natural for us to do that. It's like we go through this whole mental check, like, what am I wearing? Can I run in these shoes? I'm like, is this dress too whatever? Like, is it revealing? Like, it's craziness to me.
Right. Or even ride in your own vehicle.
Yeah.
If you're getting into the vehicle, check the back seat, make sure there's nobody in there.
Yes. Right? Like walking around with mace all the time, or when they tell you, oh, make sure you always have the key between your fingers or something. I was like, we do so much to just simply try to be safe, just navigating.
And just throw it in there. How many women actually carry a gun on them? Just want to throw it in there. We do all of this to take care of ourselves, but how many times have you heard of a woman shooting a man in self-defense?
Yeah, you're right.
The number of rapes and sexual assaults we see.
Yeah.
We're hearing all of this about gun violence.
Yes.
How many times has gun violence actually saved a woman's life? Do we have data on that? Gun violence, we've seen mass shootings. We're seeing people who are mentally unstable have access to guns.
Yeah.
People walk into schools with guns. People have walked into the Capitol building with guns.
That part, say it.
How about women start walking around with AR-15s?
Well, we'll definitely be safer at that point. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Something, because you know what's going to happen. I'll tell you. I don't carry a gun. I don't plan to carry one anytime near. I don't want to keep one in my house. I've got kids. I've got a dog. As a single mom, I work 4 jobs. I have a lot to do. I know I'll be the first person. I'm going to forget something. I'm going to forget the safety lock. I'm going to forget the gun key, the cabinet key. I'm going to forget something. And those are tiny mistakes.
Yes.
Those tiny mistakes have permanent consequences.
Absolutely. Yeah. And oh my gosh, that right? I've never thought about it like that in terms of, but we actually do see that, especially in open carry states. It's typically
some women do. Men. I know it's usually men.
But overwhelmingly, like you said, overwhelmingly, it's men. And I'm like,
we go through this whole routine and exercise on a daily basis for self-protection, but we don't carry guns. What does that say? What does that say about people who use guns?
Ooh.
What does that tell you about a person's mental makeup? The one who wants to own and use their guns.
Yeah. And to like brandish it. And to brandish it as like, this is how I stay safe. I'm like,
that's how I keep my family safe.
Wow.
So they use safety and protection as an excuse to rationalize owning guns, because people who are really vulnerable are not carrying guns.
Yes.
Think about that.
Yeah, and I mean, and if we're really honest, let's be candid here. Because when I was going through it in my head, I'm like, okay, so if I was to carry a gun, would that make me feel safer? If I'll be honest, I wouldn't. If anything, I'd feel like less safe because I'd be scared. Like, okay, if somebody gets it, if somebody overpowers me, then they might use it against me, right?
My biggest fear is my kid's going to get into my purse or whatever.
Right. And then
when we know of kindergarten kids who showed up to school with a gun in their, they got it from their parents' nightstick or something.
Exactly.
But even if it's a police officer's kid or whatever.
Yes. Right. It happens. It happens too often. And speaking of police, then the other aspect of it was as a Black person, right? As a Black woman, like I was like, I'm very hesitant to be walking around with any kind of, brandishing a weapon because the perception of that, whether or not, I have a license to carry it, right? Because we've seen incidents where the, law enforcement has, killed a person who was legally permitted to carry, and they even try to tell them, hey, I have a legal permit to carry this and I'm trying to show it to you. For me, I was just like, I feel like that would make me even like less safe than making me feel safer. Wow, thank you for bringing that up. Thank you.
Just something to think about. We really need to start thinking about our own biases. Do you know how many different kind of biases there are? I'm actually thinking of putting together a workshop of listing all the different biases and talking about the different circumstances in which they occur, and pros and cons. Biases are not always bad.
Yeah,
it's like, and this may be a strange analogy, but and we may be going a little off topic here, so we go.
If anything, honestly, intersectionality affects every area of our life. So absolutely,
all of the biases, somehow, in some way, shape, or form, they seem to be inherent in us because we all have it. We all have it. White, Black, Asian, Latino, whatever, male, female. We all have it, right?
True.
It's just some of us weaponize it.
That part. Oh, some of us weaponize our biases.
Right? We weaponize our biases because our biases seem to have more power than other people's biases.
Yes.
Right? And the couple of things I compare it to, if you will, is we all have a sexual drive. Everyone has a libido. It's a natural thing, right? And it's natural there for procreation, for the species to continue, right? But just because we have it, does it mean the first person of the opposite gender, or the first person, or whatever your sexual orientation is, you jump that person? So just because you got it doesn't mean you use it.
Consent.
Given this little thing up here called the cerebrum, which controls all your spinal reflexes, your lower level functioning, right?
Yes.
So you learn to modulate it. You learn to control it. You learn what's the right time, the right place, the right way.
Yeah, we hope.
Yeah, you right.
We hope you learned. But
right. So then we learn the skills, the dating skills, the courting skills, right? And then you have a partner, and then it's with your partner you're supposed to get intimate with, right? So we've learned how to manage our natural given libido. The same way to learn how to manage our natural given biases. We all have inherent biases. The biases are there in some way, shape, or form to help us survive.
Yes.
When we were in time, when we were cavemen, we were living out there in the elements. Something was strange and unknown. You had your guard up. Cautious.
Yeah.
Because that could be a poisonous snake. It could be something that threatens your life and your well-being. So you're cautious. You don't just go and embrace it. You proceed with caution. And that's how with time we've learned to, and that's how biases work. They touch something very deep and visceral in us. We need to start cognitively recognizing, acknowledging our own biases. And I call that process of doing that self-evaluation, I call that go splunking into the caverns of your soul.
Okay.
Right? Because our biases are hiding in those shadows. We'll rationalize it, we'll justify it, right? Like, for example, I don't know if I shared this story with you in one of the previous sessions. When my youngest daughter was really young, she was still in a rear-facing car seat. So that was her first summer, and I wanted to take the kids to the beach.
Yeah.
I'm a homely person. Put me out there in the unknown elements, my anxiety level is really high. But at home, I know where the food is. I know where the refrigerator is. I know where the laundry machine is. I know where everything is. I can get what I need when I want it.
I support that.
When I'm out there, I got to go buy food. I got to go check into the hotel. I got to make sure, kids are taken care of. And I've got to constantly watch my environment, make sure I'm safe, the kids are safe. So my anxiety level is always high.
Ooh, sorry. Ooh, sorry. Woo. Let me mute this. Sorry.
That's okay. And back in the day, we didn't have GPS. So I had to print out my directions on MapQuest.
Yes.
And that's what happens with printed MapQuest directions. They don't recalculate.
No, there's no recalculating. You missed your exit.
So I didn't miss an exit. I took the wrong exit and I landed up in a strange town that I didn't know. And the town, for a summertime, the town looked pretty empty. The streets were empty. It had nice high-rise buildings and sidewalks and everything, but the sidewalks were empty. On a summer evening, when you drive into a town and it's empty, what kind of a feeling does that give you? That makes you eerie.
Yes.
Because summertime, everyone wants to be out there till even after dark, right?
Yeah.
So I was already, my baseline anxiety is already high. Now I'm in this strange town and I'm like, oh my God, this probably is not a safe town to be lost in. The shops are all closed and they have the metal grid down them. So clearly, a town where shops need a metal grid, you're like, okay, this is not a safe place. Not what I lost.
Yeah, I got that sus factor.
So I was like, my anxiety level was really, really high. So I'm like, find a gas station, convenience store, ask for directions, and get back on the highway somehow. So I find a place, I go in, and the gentleman behind the counter, I think we were having language issues. So there was some delay in communication and me asking him how to get back on the highway. And while I'm trying to decipher what he's telling me, I hear voices from behind me giving me directions.
Yeah.
I turn around and there are these large 5 African-American men. Right? And already my anxiety level is that high. And I saw these and I really panicked. I just said, thank you. And I ran out. My kids were still in the car.
Yeah.
Right. So I ran out, sat in the car and I drove. I just drove. I'm like, I got to head east. I know I need to go. I know I need to go west. I'm just going to keep going west. I'll find the highway. But when I finally got on the highway and my blood pressure and pulse rate came back to normal, I asked myself, what just happened?
That part.
That part, you ask yourself that question, what just happened? Why did I panic? Did I have a logical, rational reason for panicking? Right? Those gentlemen were just trying to help me.
Yes.
They saw I was having a language problem. I was not able to understand what the gentleman behind the counter was trying to tell me. So they jumped in to help me and were just giving me directions. They didn't say one word out of place. Their body language, as far as I can recall, was not out of place. Their actions were not out of place. Nothing they did or said was out of place. Yet I panicked. Right? Yeah. So that level, that escalation in my anxiety, that element, I had to admit, was my own implicit bias.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Every time, every platform that I have shared this story with, people have responded by saying, you were right with being panicking. It was safe for you. You need to take care of yourself. You need to take care of your kids. You're a single mom. And then they start citing sources, how many women get raped, and da, 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 da. I'm like, I get it. I understand it. I told you I was anxious. I was already anxious. My anxiety level was high. It was further escalated with the environment. I get it. All of that is still rationalized.
Yes, there's a rational component to it. Yes. But then there's also that extraness that comes because of the context.
Exactly. Yeah. And people they bundle the whole thing together and rationalize it. And that's why I'm saying your implicit bias is hidden under that bundle. Absolutely. And when I ask them, if you want to self-evaluate, if your actions have implicit bias in them, change that person. If it hadn't been 5 large African-American men, if there had been 5 large African-American women, would I still panic?
Oh,
probably not. My panic level would be a little bit less.
Yes.
I'd still be at that high anxiety because I'm lost. So my anxiety level is high to begin with, but it wouldn't have spiked if it had been 5 African-American women. If they were short, say, and again, I'm probably stereotyping, so excuse me, 5 short Mexican men, would I panic? Probably not. And here's the sad part.
If it was white people, if it was Caucasian people, yes, men versus women, it would be very different experiences as well.
And statistics show that white men rape more than black men.
That part, right? Like, if any, you're right.
Somewhere that implicit bias has been woven into us, has been sewn into us to be afraid of the black man. And this is me who has dated a black man. So there are people here. I have black people in my family. I have black friends. I have black coworkers. I have black neighbors. I'm friends with them. I'm not white.
It will not kill me.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
On a cognitive conscious level, I call myself, I'm not racist, I'm not biased, I'm open, I respect everybody. But that experience demonstrated to me that I'm biased. And I'm like, dang.
Yeah.
Right?
If anything, like, you were just like, you were working off of the social conditioning that is, right? How people are told to perceive certain people. And even, geez, like, even when we talk about the implicit, yeah, go ahead, sorry.
No, that's okay. So now what I do is I use that experience. I call it my litmus test.
Mm-hmm.
I call it my litmus test. So whenever I'm having an interaction that's turning unpleasant or is evoking any unpleasant emotions within me, I change the demographics of the person in front of me. So if this is happening with a black man, I change it into, say, if I'm having this interaction with a black woman or a Mexican man or Latino woman or a white man, a white woman, your stereotypical blonde, blue-eyed woman. How does my emotion change? And you have to be really honest with yourself when you do this.
Yeah.
And then if I notice there is a change in my emotional level, then I know I'm functioning off of implicit bias. But if I see that my emotional level stays the same, that means my emotional reaction is purely based on the content of our interaction. And is not, that added factor of implicit bias is not in it. I call that my litmus test. And that's how I try to separate my implicit bias from whatever other negative emotions I may be having, which may be contextual, because then we wrap it up into that bundle. For example, police brutality. Or he had a knife under his seat. So they try to rationalize their actions because there was a knife under the seat. I'm like, dude, you've captured white men with guns in their hands.
No, literally. I was like, you do, and it's like, and it's after that they've actually massacred people, yet you still somehow manage to calmly retrieve them while they still actually have their body-sized, artillery. Exactly. And you're like, oh, he had a bad day. Right. He was out of his mind at that moment.
That's bundling the package together and hiding the implicit bias in its shadow. Absolutely. And that's why I call the process, you have to do brutal insight into your own. And that's why I call it go splunking into the caverns of your soul, because your implicit biases, all your biases are hiding in those shadows, and we are constantly rationalizing and justifying them and not doing the hard work of working on our own biases. Right?
Absolutely. And again, for those of you who probably may be feeling like, oh my gosh, it's always part of workplace harassment, I'm like, especially when we're connecting back to, the person at the store, that is their workplace, right? When we talk about police, their workplace is wherever they are conducting official business. So, right, and that's the thing where people, when they talk about this contextual harassment or assault, especially in context of police brutality or police excessive use of force, I told them it has street harassment, it has transit harassment woven into it, it has sexual harassment when they deal with different people. I'm like, just because you have a badge, it does not give you free reign to touch people certain ways, because you don't know the life experiences that they've had, right? Somebody may react very differently depending on their life experience that they've had, especially women who have experienced abuse. Like, just because you have a badge doesn't mean that they will not be triggered if you touch them inappropriately, just in the name of doing your job, right? And that's also workplace harassment, right? So just in one incident, we've included 4 or 5 different types of harassment or assault.
Right. But, and coming back to that point that a lot of white men do more harassing and assault and rape compared to black men, and yet they know that our society has been trained to feel safer around white men. They weaponize that.
The global society. Yes.
I mean, look at the precedent we just had. He bragged. He brags about it. For him, it's like a feather in the cap that he can do this and get away with it. He can murder. He can murder on Madison Square and get away with it.
And knows that he will. He knew that he would get away with it. I mean, case in point. Also, like it wasn't empty words, because it's like a case study, or like a comparable example would be like the Brock Turners of the world, right? Brock Turner was, it was clear that he assaulted that woman brutally and left her behind the dumpster or wherever, because he thought she was dead, right? And he goes to court, and the judge like empathizes with him. He's like, oh, he's a good kid, I don't want to ruin his life, and dude got less than 6 months for like changing a woman's life for the rest of her life.
And that's just one case we know about because it hit the media. But this goes on in our courts every single day. I mean, I've had, and I don't want to take name because I don't want to throw one person on the bus, because this is the whole system.
Yeah, thank you. It's a system.
Judge Bratton resigned. Now, again, they rationalize it and they justify it, saying that he retired. They won't even call it resign. He retired because of health issues or something. Yeah, but the day before he retired, he was perfectly fine and healthy. But the day he was called out for racist emails by the prosecutor, the next day suddenly his health became an issue and he had to retire. Right? No, we know right here in our own county, we've had one judge retire, but he was not the only one. He's not the only one. All the others that are made out of the same mold are still sitting in those seats. I personally know someone, a judge, who's again now retired, tell me to my face over a cup of coffee. In a totally different context, but made a comment, something like, Anju, you should come to night court with me. You should see all these criminals. These are all people of color and immigrants. And this is a judge who knows that my own children, my own youngest daughter's life was put in danger because her father, who's a white man, was driving drunk for the second time in 1 year. And he hasn't seen the inside of a jail.
That's the thing, right?
His history of alcohol and drug addiction. He lost his job because of that. He lost his medical license because of that. And yet the courts are willing to give them, less than a slap on the wrist. Literally, because a colored man, he would never see his kids ever again. He would be inside the jail forever. But no, he still gets his privileges. Privileges are handed to them on a silver platter.
Literally.
By
the courts that we pay for with our tax dollars.
Right. This same district magisterial justice that I was telling you about, he says, I'm racist. I got hit because I was white. Black people in my neighborhood hit me because I was white. So I'm justified to be racist. And he's a judge.
And I'm like, dude, like, you're seeing Black people predominantly as part of your job. So obviously that's like, you want to tell me that that's not going to mar the way you do?
That's just sad. Like, you know what you're doing is wrong, but you're doing it anyway. How do you sleep at night?
And that's what I said, right? There are those people who know that they are problematic, and they will be blatantly arrogant in that ignorance, because somehow they have really sold into it, and they're like, this is they've accepted it as, this is just part of my character as a human being, as a person. My character is to be racist. My character is to be misogynistic. My character is to be toxic to people.
And even if they aren't arrogant, even if they're at peace with themselves being that way, even that is disturbing.
It is.
Acknowledging and knowing that you're racist and being at peace with that, that's disturbing.
Mm-hmm. Like,
but you know what, the little, and I may be, very, what should I say, hopelessly hopeful. I'm hopelessly hopeful, because when I see someone at least admit that they are racist, then I see the hope that now that you've identified that you have a problem, maybe there is hope that you can fix it. The real problems is the ones who claim they're not racist.
Okay, yes.
You can see they're racist. but they will never admit it. So you
Mm.
can't solve a problem, what is it in Al-Anon, the first step? You have
Yeah.
to just admit you have a problem.
Admit it's a problem. Yeah.
And as long as you don't admit there's a problem, and as long as you don't realize the importance of doing that work yourself, no one else can do it for you.
Absolutely. You got to do the work.
Exactly. So that's the problem. At the end of the day, the racist elements themselves have to realize that this is a problem. And sometimes they realize through very difficult decisions. A lot of alcoholics don't realize they're alcoholics till they lose their job or lose their family or get into a car crash. Like some really bad tragedy has to happen to them for them to come to that realization. Of course, some of them come to the realization earlier, but some don't. And that's why at a systemic level with these people who are racist or conduct workplace sexual assault and sexual harassment, the problem is all universities, organizations, institutions have policies in place, but they'll implement those policies on the little pawns in the company.
That part,
the head honchos are above that. The head honchos who are bringing in top dollar, they are above the law. That's why we had Trump.
Thank you. No, and that's yes, and that's what
ordinary people, they don't apply to the head honchos, the so-called rich, powerful people.
Yes, money can buy you privilege out of following the law, right? Which is why, like you gave the example of like a white person who commits a crime, right? They're more likely to get less time or no jail time. You get a slap on the wrist, you might get probation or like go do some community service hours. You'll be all right,
My house has been broken into so many times, vandalized. I've had the police come in and see the damage done. I've had legal documents from my house stolen. The police won't even file a report. So there is no evidence of a crime occurring because it was conducted by a white man.
Hold on. Whoa.
And this is commonplace. I dare to step onto somebody else's property and they call the police, my ass will be in jail. No,
Swiftly.
And my house is getting broken into. I have to constantly change the keys to my house. I have to change the locks to my house. The police comes in. They see the damage done. They see the evidence that someone broke into my house and made a mess. I tell them that legal documents, it was all because of custody. It was the girl's father. Stealing legal documents. And the police will say, no, it's a civil case. I'm like, breaking in is not a civil case.
No.
Breaking into someone's house is not a civil case, but they won't even record it. So there is no paper trail. So
is there any way for you to file it? Is there any way for you to file
it with whom? You have to file it with the police. So the police they're being the judges.
Exactly. Yes. Thank you. Yeah, that is okay. So that's a really good kind of tag into why platforms such as HARP, right? Who do you get to tell and share information to or ask for, support and advocacy when the police are the ones who are blocking you pretty much it's very difficult to report the police to the police as well, right? And it's crazy, which is why again HARP, we're an advocacy and data aggregation portal, so we don't actually file, but we help coordinate that effort to help you with the resources as well. And actually that's actually a really good example in terms of being able, if you HARP it, right, that is part of a record that you can use, right? And you can show it happened on this day and these things happened on this day, these things happen. And you build that file of documentation up and such that when it gets that point that you're able to find a way to work the system and and say, hey, this is how I'm building this case. I have all this backlog because that is part of your documentation.
Because guess what happens? Because all of those, so I got text messages threatening me. He compares himself to, who's that guy? O.J. Simpson. He texts me stuff like, O.J. Simpson killed the mother of his children and still got custody of the kids. And I'm like,
so is that what he's saying he wants?
I'm like, are you saying you're going to kill me to get custody of the kids?
That's right? What it's sounding like. I don't know him, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but right. It sounds quite
that's what it sounded like to me. right? That's what it sounded like to me. This is the guy breaking into my house. So I can't sleep at night because I'm scared he's going to break into my house. And the police refused to even file a case. But all of this because every time he does it and gets away with it and there's no consequences, he is technically emboldened.
Yeah, he's empowered.
And his empowerment, his boldness. He looked me in the face and he tells me, I can get away with anything. His brother is, I think now he's retired, but his brother's a federal judge in New York. He says, all the judges in town.
Good old boys club.
It's a good old boy. He knows he's part of the good old boys club. He knows he has his privilege and he knows he's going to use it. He's going to weaponize it.
Oh, they will always weaponize it for their, most good.
Right. And my gripe is not just all the harassment and torture I was put through, that my own home was no longer a safe place for me. My real gripe is all of these actions, or rather, I should say, all of these inactions by the police and court put my child's life in danger.
That part.
We talked about what's the last straw.
No, seriously. Absolutely. Right? Yeah.
That was when I was livid. I was ready to go to jail for that. I'm like, you don't put my kid's life in danger and then still pretend nothing happened. And at that point, I remember even the judge that I was in front of, I said, at this point, the alcoholic is doing what the alcoholic does. He's just doing what an alcoholic does. They are self-destructive. They have no impulse control. But you as a judge, your job is to make a decision in the child's best interest. And your decisions put my child's life at risk. So at this point, technically, you can be legally liable for your own decision.
That part, right?
No, they're not. That's the thing. They're not.
What?
Judges are not legally liable for their own decision.
Wow.
And therefore, they can make any decision they want for the good old boys club. They say take one for the club.
Because there's typically no accountability.
Why do you think I'm running for office? Why do you think I'm running for office? Why do you think I'm running for office? I have a job. I have kids. I do 4 jobs. I don't need to be the prothonotary, but I'm running for office because you can't expect to change the system. You gotta do your own part. You gotta take it on your own shoulders and do what you can. Now, I'm not a lawyer. I don't qualify to run for that judge position. Although our district magisterial positions, you don't need to be a lawyer to do that. So that's why I'm learning the system, and I'm learning how can I. Yeah, you don't need. Our previous district magistrate was not a lawyer, although he had.
Well, family learned something today on HARP.
Yep, you don't have to be a lawyer. See, prothonotary position. Half the people don't know who or what a prothonotary is or what they do. Nobody knows it's an elected position. Why it's an elected position. So it's like the best kept secrets. The most powerful people want to keep it a secret so they can continue with their power. Because that's why education is power. That's why people like Trump don't want people to get an education, because education is powerful.
Absolutely.
Education is powerful.
Yeah. Wow.
Be educated. People need to be educated. You know what I think today would be a great idea?
What's that?
On public platforms like this, people should get airtime based on the amount of taxes they pay. The more tax you pay, the more time you get on a public platform to speak your story, your experience, talk about changes you want to see. Because guess what? The rich people are not paying taxes.
They're not. They're not.
They shouldn't get time on these platforms. We are paying the taxes. We're running the country.
And that's why, honestly, I have to keep, even as I do a lot of the advocacy work in the civic engagement side of things, family, it is so important for us to be civically engaged. It's important for us to be very aware of what's going on in our communities, the policies. Policies is so important, because they absolutely affect how, law enforcement is going to be interacting with you. It affects how your funds are allocated wherever you may be, and like you said, with the prothonotary, right?
Yeah,
position. I was actually unaware of that until I saw your stuff. When I saw you on Dr. Campbell's show, I was like, oh, okay. I was like, I didn't know that. And even whenever I go to vote, every now and then, some of the slots are just empty. Like no one's running on half of the positions that you can write somebody in. I was like,
exactly. Not the current Pathonatory, but the one prior to him and his father. Between father and son, they had been Pathonatory for, I don't know, something like 35 or 37 years. 37 years.
That's a family business.
They ate our tax money. And
right?
Most of these row office positions, the elected official isn't even in the office for
Yes.
4 or 5 days of the month. Pathonatory is getting paid, from what I understand, about $90,000 per annum.
Listen,
On Dr. K's program, I believe I said 60,000, and then I was told by someone else it's not 60,000, it's actually $90,000 with benefits. Tell me a job you get paid $90,000 for showing up 3 days, 4 days a month. And if you look at the Pathonatory's social media, he shows up for community events organized by community members, paid for by community members. He shows up like a celebrity, takes a bunch of selfies and takes off.
Literally.
Or he's posting signs and promoting other people's political campaign. I'm like, you're a public servant. What are you doing for the public again?
Right. And we know those people in the community who literally only show up during collecting vote seasons.
Right.
You know who you are.
Right.
Like, and again, that is and we see those, like, right, these environments of workplaces that then perpetuate the systemic misogyny. They perpetuate the abuse against women, against marginalized communities, right? Because there's no checks and balance. Who's going to check it?
There are 3 referendums on the upcoming elections. One of them is literally, and I just posted it, I think, today on Facebook and on LinkedIn. The words of the referendum, if you go to that link that I've posted, the words of the referendum is to remove the checks and balances.
Whoa.
They want to decrease the power of the governor to declare emergencies. This is all feedback.
I saw that one. Yes.
Pandemic. So they want to take away the governor's power to declare the emergency, and they want to put it back. So they want to reorganize, restructure all that. But the wording of the referendum is to checks and balances.
Wow.
Is that the definition of democracy?
Last time I checked, it's a no. It's a no for me.
Right? That's the very reason we have these many different political parties, is one is there to check and balance the other one out.
Exactly, right?
Those checks and balances, right? And the governor has been given these powers for a reason. Because when there is an emergency where the public's life is put in danger, you can't put that up for debate and discussion. At that point, a decision needs to be made for the welfare of the majority of people.
I agree with you on that.
Let's pretend I own a multi-million-dollar business. But if my life is put at risk to show up at that business, money comes, money goes. Money is not faithful to nobody.
Oh, that part. Money is not faithful to anybody.
So I'll share a little Indian story with you that I've shared on a few other contexts. So in India, as you know, we have many gods, we have many goddesses.
Yes.
The goddess of wealth is goddess Lakshmi, right? And goddess of knowledge is goddess Saraswati. And this is the story my dad told us when we were younger. He says, Lakshmi is kind of frisky, attention-seeking. She comes, she goes. The more you chase her, the more she likes to run because she likes being chased, right?
I love that.
And when she comes, there's no saying how long she's going to stay. She comes and she goes. She's very free-spirited, right? Goddess Saraswati, goddess of knowledge, on the contrary, she's difficult to please. You have to be very dedicated, very devoted, very loyal, very faithful, very committed to her. But once she's pleased and she decides to bless your home, she's there to stay. She doesn't leave. She's faithful.
There's a word right there. Please catch it if you can. Wow.
Right? So knowledge, once you have knowledge, knowledge is there to stay. Knowledge cannot be stolen away from you. And guess who's jealous of Saraswati? Lakshmi. She's like, why is Saraswati going there? What's going on over there? So guess who follows Saraswati? Lakshmi follows Saraswati. So the money will follow.
Yo, like, thank you for sharing.
Right. Get your priorities right. Chase knowledge. Knowledge cannot be stolen. Knowledge cannot be lost. It doesn't earn you interest like banks, but right now, no bank's giving you interest anyway.
Either way, yeah, right? I was like, and actually, no, you are absolutely right, right? Money comes, money goes. But when you have that knowledge, right, and then you activate wisdom and how you use that knowledge, it will always find a way to create the opportunity for the rest of the resources to come with it. And it may not necessarily be money, but it could be whatever the resource that you need. It will bring the people together to help you be successful. And absolutely, I believe that.
Knowledge is real power.
Yes.
Money is accumulated and gathered by insecure people like Trump who don't have that knowledge, who don't have. They try to compensate. They're compensators.
Who also don't have that money, but they like to pretend like they do.
Fake compensation.
Listen, like if there was a picture of fake it till you make it.
He's still faking it. I don't know if he's made it.
I mean, listen, clearly we know he'll keep faking it for as long as it takes, because that's just, child, honey. But
the thing is, because some people have gotten the message loud and clear that they can do things and get away with it, and they will not be held accountable, they weaponize it. So they're very blatant. I've been told to my face when I had filed a sexual harassment complaint against someone at my place of work. I was a graduate student at the time, with not a place of work, if you can call it a place of work. I was working in the lab at the time. He was asked to stay away. He wouldn't stay away. Every day I was getting notes or emails or gifts or tokens or something from him. At one point, he gave me a Christmas gift. It was in my mailbox. It was a check of over $2,600. It was a check in his name, not in my name. It was in his name. It was more than 6 months outdated, partially crumpled and torn, but with instructions to which bank to take it to, which manager to talk to, and how to get that check cashed into my name. I was so insulted. Like, why the hell would you give me money? This is not even in my name. This is 6 months outdated. It's crumpled and torn. How the hell is this my Christmas gift? Like, I was so insulted and angry that I tore the check, and then I made a photocopy of it and sent it to human resources. Like, what the hell is this? Like, what is this?
What was the point of that? Like, what was the point of that? Why would he do that?
Number one, he knew I'm an immigrant. I don't know the laws. Number two, he knew I'm a single mom and a graduate student. I'm flat broke. They say I don't have a pot to piss in.
Right, literally.
Right? So the $2,600 was the carrot he was dangling. It was a bait. If I took that bait and if I followed the instructions and I took that check into a bank to try and cash it into my name, that's felony fraud. That's a felony offense, because banks are federal institutions.
Yes.
So that's no misdemeanor. That's no petty crime. That's a felony fraud. So
even if it's just $1, by the way, people,
it doesn't matter. Yeah, it doesn't $1, a penny, any money not made out to you, and you try to cash that at a bank. That's a felony fraud. I didn't know that.
With proof now.
So luckily, my father raised a woman with integrity. And I'm like, I didn't know it was a fraud. All I knew was, this is not money I earned. This is not my money. And this is from a person who I want nothing to do with. So I wasn't being greedy either. And instead, so not only did I not take the bait, but by sending it to human resources, I outed him, because as a full-time faculty at the institution, his contract is he can't be working for someone else. And that check was now proof that he was working for someone else and getting money from some other institution. So he was in violation of his contract with his own organization. So it sort of backfired. So not only did I not take the bait and not commit a felony fraud and get myself in jail and get myself deported, because at that time I was an international graduate student. I was on a study visa. I was on an F1 visa.
The setup of it all.
A lot of immigrants are set up.
Yes.
To commit crime unknowingly.
Yeah, can we come back and have that conversation? Because that is a whole conversation in and of itself. In the immigrant community, because we're not knowledgeable when we come here,
and we have
people get set up. And you're sitting there, yeah, because also again, folks who don't know the law are oftentimes they're scared to like ruffle feathers, so they're like, okay, I guess that's how I'm supposed to do it, and they do it and end up getting in trouble and getting deported. It's a whole complicated.
And this may sound really, really dumb, but at that time, I didn't even know that this was something I could report to the police. I thought I had to report it where I am at the Human Resources, and they kept telling me, "Don't worry, we'll take care of it. We'll take care of it."
Yeah.
I didn't even know that this is something that can be reported to the police. I thought police only does like break-ins and burglaries and road traffic accidents and crime, This was not a crime according to me. I didn't even know that this was a crime. And that's the thing with immigrants. We don't know the laws. We don't know the system. So we are like sitting ducks for these people.
Absolutely.
Right? And so because I didn't take the bait and because it backfired, he was pissed off.
Of course.
He sent me an email from his work email to my work email. And I quote the email again. I don't want to use foul language on your platform, but literally quoting the email. It says, "Go back to effing India and live like an effing bitch."
Wow.
I forwarded the email to Human Resources too. And Human Resources says, "Don't use our server for such emails. This is personal stuff. Do it on your personal email." And I'm like, what is personal about this? This is not personal. This is not personal.
And it's clearly work related.
Wow. Because that's the response he got. The following weekend, he shows up to me and towers over me, and literally his words, and these words echo in my head every single day, because these words later on became the fuel that ignited me to do everything. A lot of the things I've done since then, this is the fuel that ignites me to do this work. He looked me in the face and he says, "What the F did you think they were going to do with your effing little complaint?"
That part.
I'm a faculty here. I bring revenue into this institution. The revenue I bring in pays the HR their paycheck. HR gets paid to protect me, not you. You're fresh off the boat, easy pickings. I can replace a dozen. You can be replaced by a dozen for a dime. So shut the F up.
Wow.
These were the words from his mouth. That's the day I remember where I was sitting. I remember what I was wearing that day, and I remember just the blood draining out of my body. Like that's the day my hope died. Remember, I was talking to at Dr. Campbell's platform.
Yes.
I told her about my domestic violence experience, and I told her, but I had hope. When I got out of that situation, I had hope. On this, when I was told that I can be replaced by a dozen for a dime, after everything I had gone through with this person, and then I ran into this wall and realized there is no recourse, that's the day I lost hope. That's the day I lost hope, that there is no recourse. All of the procedures and policies and rules and HR and EEOC, all of that is lip service BS. It's for the ordinary people in the riffraff. It's not for the real criminals. It's not for the real criminals.
Thank you for sharing that. And family out there, as you're watching, like we have dropped some major real talk today. Like, please, if this information could help the next person, please share it. Share this information if you want. And because I know we have to get going here because we're on the 58-minute mark, but we will be, Dr. Anju Singh will definitely be back. We have a whole program line. She'll be back, and we will unpack more of this, because these are the conversations. These are the sharing of real life experiences that we need to be having. We need to normalize having these conversations and calling out these perpetrators of abuse, of harassment, of assault across the board, especially within our workplaces. Because again, right, we need to move beyond that performative diversity of, don't harass, whatever. It's oversimplified in those technical trainings. And the reality is how it's actually practically exerted over people is very different. And so we need to be cognizant of that. And so with that, if you would like to stay connected with us, that's at www.harpnow.org. And Dr. Singh, you can find her at Prof. Anju Singh, and I will also tag her in this video. But again, Thank you so much for sharing your time today. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and your knowledge. And we will catch you guys on the next session of Let's Harp About It. Have a lovely weekend. And yeah, be encouraged out there in all you do.
Thank you so much. Thank you for creating this platform.
Absolutely. You're very welcome. Bye, guys.
See ya. Bye-bye.